Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we now have a full house, so please put your hands together in a collective round of applause to welcome our entire panel on stage. And it's over to Mr. Bijou Kurien and the panel.
So thank you. Thank you everybody. Thank you fellow panelists for being here. I think all the sessions that we've had in the morning have kind of led into this particular session, which is the new CFO checklist, the theme of the conference. And as I was clarifying to everybody that when we say new CFO, it's not about a new person becoming a CFO, but it's a new checklist for an existing CFO. So that is the larger thought process that we've had. I've shared a few thoughts with my fellow panelists to kind of make sure that we're all on the same page and we know what exactly we're talking about. But I think of Aditya's presentation from Deloitte plus Ashwin's opening remarks and all the other remarks in the morning, what we know very clearly here today is that change is upon us. And with the change which is upon us, we are under pressure as CFOs to be able to adapt or perish. So these are the two choices that we typically have. And in the course of adapting, the first part of it is to be able to recognize change. So let me, pose this question to Giri, because I think he's probably seen it from different perspectives in his role at Arvind. So when you look at shopping today, and when you look at shopping about 10 years back, there's been a sea change. As I mentioned earlier, the digital quotient has become much larger. There's online, there's e-commerce, there are online-only brands called D2C brands. There are offline brands which are trying to also offer online presence. There are people who are able to buy online and return it to a store, or buy on a store and return it at their homes, etc. So while all of that is from the consumer and the customer perspective, when you think about it from the company's perspective, what are some of the things that we have to be worried about when suddenly, the whole floodgates of channels are open to customers like this?
Yeah, thanks, Bijou. I think very interesting thoughts to, debate and deliberate. One thing is for sure, 10 years ago and now, the customer is the same. Yeah, I think it's important that we keep it in mind that the customer, he has become more discerning, more demanding. He seeks value, he seeks experience, he seeks a better product and more premiumization. And Arvind being a slightly more premium brand company, I can relate that very well. But, to service this customer, obviously many things have changed. Earlier it used to be very simple. You put the product in the shelf, time to time do some marketing, which was mostly offline. And over a period, I think customers visited the stores. There was hardly any online. It was picking up, but what changed in the last 10 years, there are multiple channels where the customer can go and buy. He can buy at the store, like you said. He buys online, he buys at a partner portal, he buys in an MBO store, and obviously he's got a lot of choices. What actually works well for the company and for the consumer is that if you're able to offer him the product of choice that he wants at the store or at the web page, then you got him, and you got him, forever almost kind of a thing. And you need to be consistently doing that thing again and again. I mean, retail we all know, I mean, we have read it many times, but we forget. Retail is simple actually. Okay, keep doing consistently what you want every time so that the consumer you want to service is always hooked on to you.
Thanks, Giri. Santosh, if I may pose that question to you, the same question, and looking at it from an advisory perspective, how would you look at the same question?
I think from a non-CFO perspective, if I were to look at it, right, the challenge is multifold, right? Because you're not only serving from a business point of view, you're serving an important customer who is posing a lot of accounting challenges to you, right? How is he returning? From where is he returning? How are my systems equipped to actually capture that information which is coming in? How am I reconciling my books, right? A lot of challenges which opens up with the new ways of working, right? Earlier, as Giri mentioned, there were very few ways of doing it, and it was very simple in some sense, right? You put it on the shelf and you take it and you know how to manage it. But how are you actually taking this back into your books? What challenges you face in terms of compliances? The entire quality life cycle around managing that inventory when it is getting back, right? So it opens up a lot of challenges around that. How can you use some of the technologies around this to be able to manage it better and efficient? I think that is where the role of a CFO kind of kicks in to say that, am I actually supporting the business, or am I making their life complicated and more difficult for the businesses when these challenges comes up, right? So that is where the no CFO and the KNO CFO comes into picture, right?
Great. Thanks, Santosh. Rajesh, a question to you. When you look at a single mall operator, then you only have to be worried about how much has it cost me to build this mall. What is the cost of servicing the capital that I invested in building the mall? What is my cost of running the mall? And how much can I get in terms of rent? When you have a whole series of malls, some performing better, some not so well. And finally, when you club all these things together and then make it a readable model, and then you're asking for public investments into a readable model, the life of the CFO suddenly changes from merely accounting in the one phase to now becoming the outward-facing part of the company, meeting with investors and meeting with the analysts and trying to ensure that yields are always, improving over a period of time, etc. So how have you seen the role of a CFO, especially in your case, change over a period of time and the new demands which are there on you?
Interesting question, Bijou. So I think just to clarify, REITs are real estate investment trusts new to India, have been for long in Singapore and the developed countries. I think we're part of Blackstone. The first REIT came in the form of Embassy, and then Mindspace by Rajesh, and the third was again Blackstone in the form of Nexus Select Trust. So I think REITs in terms of malls or real estate is more of kind of regulating the real estate, bringing it into one umbrella with a lot of regulations. It being a LODR governance company, it also has to adhere to the REIT regulations, which is apart from what the LODR prescribes. I think this is more regulated form of rent generating assets which are put together, very, very high quality assets are put together in one trust. And instead of individuals going and owning, buying out properties, rent yielding properties, they can instead invest into the units of the trust, where 90% of the net distributable cash flow has to be distributed to unit holders on a 6-monthly basis. So what it actually means is, you kind of invest a small portion into the units of the REIT and still get dividends plus a capital appreciation like you get in an IPO company. So life in terms of a CFO in a REIT of rent generating assets, again, while it had been unregulated, now when you consolidate everything, and you have different assets, different yielding assets, different valuation of all these assets kind of coming together and giving you a value of a portfolio, which then has to be profitable. The profits has to be distributed on a quarterly basis. And then the regulations around the REITs is not only doing the 2-pager on the disclosures, it is whole round of balance sheet, profit and loss account, the cash flows, and the distribution has to happen. So I think it becomes more complicated, and that's I think the objective of SEBI is to increase the product class, promote the product class where real estate gets regulated the way, I think it's the way that we see it differently. And real estate has always been on the negative side in India. When REITs have come in, Grade A assets have been kind of consolidated to create this trust, and the rent generation and distribution is so regulated, which makes it a super product class.
Just tell me, when you started, obviously none of this was existing in India.
Yeah.
When you started your CFO journey.
Yeah.
And you've grown into this. So how have you personally changed in order to be able to adapt to these new demands?
So I used to work for consumer. I used to work for Nokia and then Microsoft, and then getting into real estate when Blackstone started this retail ventures. So I think that's the beauty of a CFO, being agnostic to the sector, right? So you can, personally, you can go from a tech or a consumer company to a real estate company or a private equity and then grow the business there. So like Mr. Kasiwal mentioned, it's not always the CFO doing the accounting or the governance or the compliance, but growing business. I think the opportunity was there from a Microsoft coming to Blackstone and kind of building this Nexus malls where we started acquiring 2 malls, and now we have around 17 malls, some hotels, and we have got it listed, successfully listed as the first retail REIT in India. So personally, the journey has been great. I think from doing compliances and in a very flat organization like Microsoft, it's a great organization to be comfortable, to coming into a new organization and starting to build a business which is a kind of a form of its own.
Thanks, Rajesh. Anand, the question to you. You're in the apparel retail business. And in the apparel retail business, it's a constant thing of how much inventory do I need to buy? Have I got enough, not enough? How much is the excess inventory? How do I get rid of it? So there's a whole bunch of things around inventory planning. Then there's a whole bunch of things around sales, which is, this is my seasonal sales. This is my end of season sales. And I need to be able to provide this in terms of pricing and promotions in order to be able to achieve whatever be my sales targets. A lot of these decisions on what to buy and what to promote and how much to promote is actually taken by the merchandise team, whether it's a buyer or a planner or people like them. So how do you see an increasing role for the CFO in actually determining, how to be able to sell, how to be able to price and promote, and how to be able to stock?
Yeah, thank you. I think the role of the CFO in this planning or connected planning process is immense. And the success of any retailer actually depends on how fast you are able to rotate your inventory or how well you are able to manage your inventory. And it's not just about the buying decision, it's also about the timing. It's also about, what you want to buy. And it's no longer just only around what the consumer wants. It's also about innovation. It's also about the investments that you do in terms of R&D, in terms of designing, in terms of what is the infrastructure that you create, and how all of these pieces come together to allow the entire planning function to, let's say, forecast more clearly and more accurately. And then as a CFO, as the, the owner of the purse, at least, you are then able to take more seasoned calls around what is the right thing to do for the business and what is the capability of the supply chain infrastructure to deliver all of that. Now, obviously, it's not just about a financial decision. It has far greater implications, because you can at best say that this is what you can buy, or this is the amount that you want to buy, or this is the amount that you would want to sell. But we all know retail works and consumers work in a very different manner. So what the actual consumer will end up buying and when they will buy is not really up to you. You can make your wishes and you can make your demands, but eventually what really happens is dependent on what the consumer is actually going to take. Now you have to keep a very efficient track of what is moving in the market, which part of the country is selling what, which stores are doing what consumers are demanding what. And now in the times of online retail, the kind of feedback that you get is very, very instantaneous. So you're really able to predict in almost real time what can do better, or what is needed more, or what is less, and thereby have a tighter control over inventory. Now, apparel inventory is not something that you can manufacture in 1 month or 10 days. So it is a cycle, and that is where the the role of connected planning and connected data intelligence and analytics plays a very, very big role. And that is also where CFO can play a very important role in analyzing and determining what exactly can be good for the business, and thereby reduce the working capital cycle and improve inventory health.
Sure. So I think the point you're making is that there is a lot more technology which is available with the CFO to be able to kind of compare with the decisions which are being taken, and in some cases also recommend to the operations team about what exactly can be done. So Giri, even in Arvind, do you see a similar opportunity?
Yes, of course. I mean, this is a favorite topic of all apparel retailers, I guess. We have to sleep and live by it. Yes, I think what Anand says is right, and what you picked up is absolutely bang on. There is this part of planning, and then there is this part of the decision and nudging the business to take the decision. So obviously, a lot depends on how soon you're able to catch the trends, how soon you're able to find what is not likely to sell out, and hence, nudge the business to take a call on the discounting or the liquidation, or something which will flush out the inventory and bring your cash back to the bank. As Anand said, I think the most important and significant factor which determines profitability for some of us is how fast can you rotate, how many times can you rotate the money. And obviously it will depend on you catching the trends very, very early using data and analytics. I mean, it's in the number of styles and the number of stores and number of taste, consumer taste. It's impossible for someone to do manually. Obviously use data and technology.
Amit, would you like to add to this? Because you're also from the apparel industry.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you. I think it's a very interesting topic because everybody struggles with this and nobody has got it right. Unfortunately, we keep trying and figuring out what is the best way forward into this. I think very important, as both mentioned, what is you have planned something, it may work, it may not work. But what is the ultimate solution you want to find out with that inventory? And that is very important, that sometimes what happens, businesses do not want to take a call. They start believing next season we will try one more time. I think there the finance has to say, yes, we are willing to take that hit. We have considered that part and parcel of this business, that certain number of products will not sell at a full price. And I think that is the aim. And what it today with the data analytics, it helps you to say what 50 I think has worked for you and 5 or 10 has not worked for you. So that at least can you reduce it in the next time. And I think that is a very iterative process, and finance has to be fully involved right from day one when you're planning, when you're making a bookings, and what is happening as the trend keeps on progressing. So therefore, it becomes very critical for the finance team to get and present the right data, because what happens in these kind of situations, many times the data gets skewed because everybody wants to show, no, my trend was good, I had predicted the right thing, but the data has to speak the truth. And I think that is something which we are seeing more often, that people want to take it forward and implement going forward. And as I said, never it will be perfect. We'll keep improvising it. Thank you.
Yeah, so I always say there is an art and there is a science in retail. So when you talk to the buyer or to the designer, they say that, I think this will be a hot selling design. I think this will be the right price for this. We should order so much in terms of quantity. So the science of it is, after it starts coming into stores, how quickly does it take to sell? How much does it sell? And finally, when you exhausted it, how much did you discount it? So many a time, if you were to take the science of it, which is capturing the past history, to be able to take and present to the buyer, saying the last time you took stripes, this is what happened. So please use my information to decide this time when you're doing stripes as to what exactly do you want to do. So I think that's a great opportunity, as all of you have pointed out, a great opportunity for collaboration, because invariably this is a tension point. And how to diffuse this tension and make it more collaborative is probably the important thing in all of this in the future. Aditya, I think you're handling one of the most complex categories in businesses which I can think of. So at Jiomart, when you look at all of what you're doing, one. Secondly, strategic changes that you keep making as you move along. And thirdly, all of the pressures that you're under, because you've got the Kirana store, you've got your own formats, you've got the requirement to be able to offer something differentiated. You've got competition coming in from one side through quick commerce, and then, of course, the slotted commerce players. So when you really think of your working environment, the competition that you actually are facing, and then the internal environment in terms of what you need to be pushing, which also changes occasionally, how do you look at your job as the CFO of this business? I know it's not an easy job at all.
So, thank you. Very interesting question. I think the key for any CFO in a changing environment or in a static environment is to stay focused on being obsessed about the customer. I think if you're obsessed about the customer, you are understanding your customer needs, and you're able to accurately predict what customer is wanting from you. You will be able to continuously innovate and stay focused on key KPIs, both internally and externally, to deliver on those needs. I think if you look at the traditional CFO jobs, I think controllership, compliance, reporting, financial planning are table stakes. So some of these things are must-dos for you. I think how the world is now changing, especially in the e-commerce domain, it is very important to understand your demand pattern, understand your customer, and build your strategies so that you are able to sustain despite the changing needs of the customer. I think one of the things when we think about change internally that we keep talking about is to be very clear about what's not changing and sort of freeze what's not changing so that you can really focus on what's changing, and out of what's changing, you sort of break it into what are must-dos. Your compliance and leakages are must-dos. You need to fix them first. What are good to-dos, and what do you not want to do? So I think that's how we sort of balance it. Also, I think finally, there is a need of bringing all the stakeholders, cross-functional stakeholders together as CFOs and creating the right mechanisms in the ecosystem where all the conversations around key KPIs, what we need to do for our customers and for our P&L can happen. So I think this is how we generally think about it when we think about all the changes which are going around us.
Yeah, I think it's a very important point. What you said is focus on the things that require change and freeze on the things that don't require any change. And one of the things, at least I've seen over the last few years, at least the last 10, 20 years, is the fact that the core accounting function, the controllership role that the CFO plays, that has kind of become constant. I mean, there is nothing much which is happening or changing it any particular form. A little tweak came in when we had GST, but after that, it's now settled back to normal again. The entire bill processing, with the advent of technology, today there are enough and more ways of being able to handle all of the bill processing so that your entire supplier payments and all that will also get sorted out. What seems to be actually also now suddenly coming in are things like ESG. Now, as a large listed company, you have ESG requirements. And when you have ESG requirements, initially it is given as a small BSRB report as part of the annual accounts. Slowly it is coming in as saying, please indicate the measures that that you're actually capturing. And then over a period of time, it will start expanding in terms of what all measures need to be presented. And it will be in a situation where it will be nobody's baby. You will have an ESG head, but the ESG head will have absolutely no ability to be able to capture any number if it doesn't come out of the core accounting system of the company. Because if you have to show a cost saving, if you have to show a reduction, if you have to show impact that you've made, all these have to be captured financially. And that will finally come back again to the CFO. So when you look at things like ESG, CSR, and the new requirements around CSR, how do you see some of these aspects suddenly beginning to start playing a role in the role of a CFO?
Great question. I think some of these aspects need to be thought through in two parts, in my view. One is purely what you need to do from a governance and from a compliance standpoint. I think we need to just separate it out. Also, some of these aspects present an opportunity to you. When I say that, let me give you an example. Think about electric vehicles and how they are being used in our last mile delivery fleet, right? When we think about them, they are cost effective as well as they are giving an opportunity to serve the environment better. Think about packaging, how we have moved from, let's say, plastic packaging to paper packaging. Okay, again, cost effective, and we are able to cater to the environment needs. So I think we should not see them as pure challenges, in my view. I think we should separate out governance and, of course, they add overburden. So we should separate out governance, but we should also figure out what opportunities are lying in terms of integrating some of these things into our strategic planning to come up with outcomes which are helping you deliver to your customer in a more sustainable way.
Let me pose this next question to Amit. We live in a world which has got significant macro and microeconomic, changes happening, political changes, etc. If you look at the last 2-3 years, we've seen a Russia-Ukraine war had some impact on oil, had some impact in terms of some staples. We saw Israel-Hamas war which has happened and had some impact on freighters, container costs and availability and time. We saw a small unrest, if you were defining it, in Bangladesh, and we immediately saw an impact as far as the apparel supply chain goes. So, your ability to now plan long term is becoming less and less. And you're having to figure out that you have to have contingency plans at any point of time. So two things emerge. One is being able to define these as risks. And the CFO now is normally the person who's the author of the risk register, saying that these are all the risks that I see in the business and these are the chances and the likelihood of it happening. The second part of it is to be able to understand what are the changes of these risks over a period of time. And in case it occurs, then what is my contingency plan for that particular risk? So where do you see that aspect now getting, while it might be a business operations activity, but the person who normally captures it is a CFO, because he's the one who's got the best oversight over all the implications of a risk. So how do you see that?
Very interesting and absolutely the right time to ask this question, because first of all, you look, what you identify as a risk in a risk register is something which is very remote chance of truly happening. What happens, who knew that Russia-Ukraine war will erupt or the Bangladesh crisis? I think 2 or 3 things fundamentally. long-term objectives are very clear, which maybe 10 years back you were very clear objectives, identified goals and everything. But maybe today the situation is slightly fluid. What we need to do is fundamentally, there will be challenges which we all need to be prepared of. Second thing, what it brings us an opportunity. I look at it, for example, Bangladesh immediately brought a great opportunity for the Indian garmenting industry. Now, how quick we are able to adapt and take the benefit of it. For example, I'll give you, we are in engineering business also, we saw big floods in Slovenia. Now we said that if there is a flood in Slovenia, the ring gear supplies would not be able to happen to the Western European markets. We had the capacity, we said we will supply to you. And some of the customers who were not coming to us for 5 years, we got automatically through that and they have become a long-term customers. Similarly, what we realized, because India today sits on a very sweet spot and at least away from such kind of challenging situations, I think as a businesses, we need to be prepared of our capacities or our channel strengths, our resources in such a manner that something or the other will happen globally and you need to really tap that opportunity. As far as mitigating it from day to day, because you don't know what kind of a risk is going to come, so I think you have to prepare yourself that some of these things will arise and you should have certain resources available in order to meet. For example, container freight. Now, there are always going to be situations. We saw at one point of time the container freight dipped to even $100 from here to Dubai. And today you are seeing $3,500. Now, in these kind of situations which can change very, very rapidly, I think what is important is how do you identify having a great mix between India market, which is a very fast growing market, as well as the export market. So if you create that kind of a mix for, let's say for the freight or any of the geographical challenges, like that, everybody has to consider, considering their business, what are some of the broad mitigants I can bring, considering the business rationale. Maybe for a slight period of time, your profitability, your revenue may take a hit, but on a long-term sustainable basis, you will be still fine.
Good. Santosh, one question to you, and this is more from an advisory consultancy perspective. One of the things that I've seen with several companies is that they have several channels of sale. They have an online, they have an offline, they have it across different geographies, across different product groups, etc. And often I see that there is a consolidated view of the business in terms of profitability. And there is less interest in actually looking at a deep dive view, saying, is my online profitable or not? Is my offline profitable or not? Is my offline in the north profitable or not? Is my offline in UP profitable or not? What are the parameters which kind of define profitability? And if I can define any, let's say, unifying characteristics across unprofitability, so should I stay in certain categories? Should I get out of certain categories of products, etc.? So where do you see the role of the CFO in driving that agenda?
I think that's a very pertinent question, and especially in the complex environment retail operates, right, with your multi-diverse segments that you operate, and the challenges which the product line itself brings into picture, right? I think many organizations kind of still struggling with it, irrespective of the industries in some sense, right? Because the quality of the data and the way in which you capture the information across your different systems, not just the accounting systems, but also your business systems. How do you talk to each other, right? Do I have a unified view? And then especially when our ERPs have grown up over a period of time, we carry with some of the legacy ERPs while the businesses have changed, evolved. I fail to reflect that and kind of come back and do a lot of manual reconciliation to be able to get that answer, right? Especially when I'm acquiring a lot of different businesses and then trying to get different ways of capturing information. One thing where the CFO comes into picture is to say that, am I actually laying down the principles of the game in terms of capturing the information, not just from a finance point of view, but from a business point of view in terms of what I need to measure? Is that the right measure to be able to pick up from the businesses? And am I speaking the same language as my business does, right? Because often CFOs are accused of having their own numbers vis-a-vis what business wants to see, right? So am I actually speaking the business language in terms of capturing the details? And how do I have a framework or a governance mechanism in place that every data point that I'm capturing and the finance language which I'm speaking reflects the same? And am I actually speaking the business language in some sense? That is where the CFOs comes into picture to say that how the entire data governance structure is built up, what technologies I'm utilizing, how the reconciliation happens across different systems, etc. Right? So, and how this information is fed back into the different pockets. One important thing and a related thing is to say that what is the decision excellence which I'm building into the entire scheme, right? As CFOs, we are not we don't have the bandwidth to make all the smallest of the decisions, right? So how do I empower my teams to make those decisions on the backdrop of the information which is available? So that they are self-reliant and you know what you want to pick up and actually fight battles for, not getting into the granularities in some sense.
Thanks, Santosh. What we'll do is just open up this panel to questions from the audience. So if there's anybody who's got any questions of anybody individually here, then please feel free to raise your hand. Somebody will get a mic to you. You can mention your name and you can ask a question specifically to anybody. Any questions, or we can go back again to the panel? None so far. Okay, good. So let's go back again to the panel. One of the areas that I wanted to ask you is that, you know, over time, and a lot of you all are experienced CFOs, how have you actually gone about the journey of skilling yourself? You know, because we know the world around us is changing. We also have to change. So we have to change. What more do we have to do? How do we actually skill ourselves? And when I talk about it, it's not about, you know, what is the additional certification. That's also part of the process. But the kind of people whom you meet, the kind of conversations that you have, the kind of analysis that you present, the kind of decisions that you're a part of, how has all of that changed over a period of time? Giri.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. And yes, I think one of the most important ways to skill or upskill yourself is to read. Read and read. Say, you know, people have experienced it and they've written it down. So learn from them. The second one is to be, you know, be in the front of the decision making in your business and hence get challenged. Many times you might not be right, and I would say it would be good to admit that and, you know, learn from that and that experience and keep moving forward. And of course, the last one you yourself mentioned is, you know, attend some classrooms and do some certification. All those are fine, but the biggest area where you get upgraded yourself is a continuous on-the-job, you know, kind of training that we all get. As we become bigger and more, you know, larger companies, multi-channel, geographies and so on and so forth, you get to learn more and more, and hence you apply those techniques and help yourself basically.
Anand, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with Girdhar. I think reading is just a must-do. You just can't escape that. And I agree to every point that he said. I just want to add, I think also travel and also meet as many number of people that you can. And particularly today, now you have so many consultants, so many advisors, and so many, you know, agencies that know. They are so super specialized. They can teach you a lot about your own business, and they can teach you a lot about things that you would not have dreamt of. There are so many new ways of doing things that you can just keep exploring. Even in terms of reading, I would just want to add, you know, there's my favorite way of reading is, you know, normally you flip through a newspaper or you flip through a book and you read only sections that you like. And I learned this from one of my very early bosses. He said you should read a book cover to cover, and especially a magazine cover to cover. So read things that you don't like to read or you would have not read, because that opens up your mind. And that's something that has really helped me a lot. So I would just say that's really good.
Amit, would you like to?
All what they said is absolutely perfect. I would just say that in today's so fast changing environment, a lot of us as traditional companies, we continue to believe what we have been doing is the best because there's a success formula. However, we miss out that today's startups, which somebody mentioned they're doing so going very fast. I'm saying it is also very important to bring them in, hear them, and understand what are the major dynamics which they are thinking. Because they are thinking far and beyond. They don't have anything big to lose because they're starting from a scratch. And I think for us, companies which are larger, they always think, oh, if I lose. And I think that is one very big challenge for many of us that we don't want to adapt. And I think that is something which we have started the culture, that we start bringing people who have done startups. Maybe it is in our line of business or not, but at least to hear them and understand what are the nuances they have faced and how it has helped them. So that is one very important. The second thing is also there are enough and more forums which are being made available with a very specialized knowledge which you can get. And third thing, for a retail business, nothing better knowledge you can get is going to the market. And as a finance people, we tend to shy away to go to the market, but it is the best knowledge which you can get and participate in the business process. If you are in the market, you have the first-hand pulse of that.
Great. Thanks, Amit. Aditya, a question to you. Traditionally, when we've looked at businesses, we've looked at first the P&L of the business and then the bottom line. We've looked at the balance sheet to understand, how much money has been actually utilized to deliver this particular P&L. And sometimes we go a little beyond that to also look at how much of this P&L is translated as cash flows. However, when you look at some of the startups which Amit had mentioned, it doesn't start from a P&L first of all. It starts with a single number, which is my valuation. And then the valuation gets driven by some multiple. And that multiple might be sometimes a multiple of revenue, could be a multiple of the number of transacting customers, could be a multiple of the gross margin that they get from the business. And in case they are profitable, some multiple of EBITDA, so sometimes like that. And many a time what tends to happen is some of the old school companies tend to get compared unfavorably with these new school companies which occupy share of mind, share of wallet of investors, as well as share of press. So when you think about it from a longer term perspective, how do you see the reality playing out? Because you're in both sides of the business. You've got a valuation game also in Reliance Retail, plus also you've got to deliver, knowing Mr. Ambani, you'll have to deliver profits at the end of the day.
No, absolutely right. I think the fundamentals of business don't change. So I think while temporarily there might be marketing gimmicks which can play around, I personally believe that the fundamentals of business are ensuring healthy growth and top line, but at the same time ensuring that there's a healthy bottom line in place. So first of all, I would want to start by appreciating that fundamental. The second thing, however, is there are certain nuances that needs to be factored in when we look at business valuations. Nuances in terms of what is the customer acquisition cost that they have, what is the long-term value that they are creating. I'll give you a simple example. If let's say a company is having a lot of Gen Z customers, and let's say it's an e-commerce company, Gen Z converts 6 times better than any other generation. Okay, today they might not be having the right purchasing power to spend on an e-commerce business, in e-commerce shopping or discretionary shopping, right? But tomorrow they will have that power and they will spend. Okay, so nuances like this, if there is a company which is doing fairly well on tech and is able to sustainably use tech across functions in terms of building their supply chain, building their marketing, building their category functions, then in the long term, probably there is a fair chance that they would succeed. So while the fundamentals of business won't change, I think some of these nuances needs to be factored in when we are thinking about valuing a business. It is very important to separate noise from what the core strength of a company really is. when, as CFOs, we evaluate any business.
Good, thank you. I think we're running out of time, so thank you very much for that very, very interesting discussion, sharing so generously of your knowledge and experience. So thank you to the panelists. Round of applause for them, please.